Thanks everyone for coming. So first, I just want to say that I'm doing my best as anyone can to have the intellectual honesty and also the curiousness that this subject deserves. It's a very complex subject. It's also very provocative, and I just hope that people approach this with an open mind, and in particular, just appreciate some of the thought and research that goes into this, that went into this. So I want to talk about Bitcoin quantum security. First, I'm going to start off with what is a quantum computer, because it's not like very obvious in some ways, like what they are when we talk about these things. What's pictured here is a superconducting quantum computer. So it has a chip at the bottom that gets cooled to sort of like very close to 0 Kelvin, so absolute zero, and uses liquid helium, liquid nitrogen to cool itself, so 2 coolants. Additionally, so it gets covered with this Dewar that then is called a dilution refrigerator. And it's because this thing gets so cold, there are actually like little loops in the wires that help with the like when metals contract. So yeah. What does a quantum computer do? So quantum computers have what are called fundamental units of quantum computing called qubits, and they're essentially, when you entangle multiple qubits together, you're able to essentially model all the states of a problem in a mathematical construct called Hilbert space. And you can actually then connect these in circuits with gates that can perform various quantum computations and logical operations like controlled NOT gates or Hadamard gates, different kind of like forms of quantum computation that that explore this problem space in a probabilistic manner. But eventually it'll get more deterministic actually as they get better. The picture here is the IBM Quantum System 2. This is a commercially available piece of hardware. It's anyone's guess if it's any good. It can do at least 100 qubits, maybe even closer to 1,000. But these are physical qubits, and I'll get into that in a minute. But it's that said, it's kind of pretty to look at, and also somewhat imposing. How does quantum computing pose a risk to Bitcoin? Well, so essentially, the major thing to consider is that there's public-private key cryptography used in Bitcoin, also known as asymmetric cryptography, and this depends on a property called the elliptic curve discrete log problem, or ECDLP, which is something that Neha mentioned earlier in an earlier talk today. And there's kind of like this assumption that this is going to be secure. There's also a lot of assumptions that go into all the things that go into making this concept of quantum computing a thing. So plenty of assumptions to go around, I suppose. One thing I want to address first off is that, yes, while technically quantum computing can affect mining through what's called Grover's algorithm doesn't scale as well as this other algorithm I'm going to talk about. So it's just not as big a concern at the moment. One of the bigger concerns is how signatures work, in particular transaction signatures. So when you go and receive some coins to an address and then you want to spend them later, you have to sign the transaction and also reveal your public key. And there's an algorithm called Shor's that we've known since 1995, and well, it was originally explained in 1995. The thing that they discovered in 1995, Peter Shor explained, was that it was one of the first instances that had been theorized in that a quantum computer can demonstrate what's called quantum advantage now. And also later, we discovered, or maybe around the 2001, it was explained to the cryptography community, or people just kind of found out or considered that elliptic curve cryptography, which was a burgeoning field at the time. The SecP 256K1 paper, for example, was written in 2000, or the specification was published in 2000. And that's the one that's used by Bitcoin. Around 2000, 2001, it was also revealed that, or considered that, quantum computers could pose a threat to elliptic curve cryptography. And so, essentially, elliptic curve cryptography as being the thing that gives us the concept of public keys, well, it makes it so that, in particular, whenever you expose your public keys, that makes coins vulnerable. So when are public keys exposed? Well, we have 4 cases. The first one is early addresses, like the pay-to-public key coins. They start with 04, or technically also 02 or 03. These are like hex-encoded public keys that are just sitting on chain for anyone to see. These also are known as Satoshi's coins. They're also just any CPU miner operating at the time. Anybody who hasn't spent their coins yet from those addresses, well, please do so now. Reused addresses are also a concern. So pretty much any type except for the one I'm going to talk about soon, actually, is that when you publish your transaction, the public key goes on chain along with your signature, and that can be recovered and go into that Shor's algorithm there. Taproot addresses are also an entire public key just encoded in an address form. It's not a hash of an address or hash of a key like many other address types are. In particular, pay-to-witness public key hash is perfectly fine, and those start with BSU and Q, and they're a bit shorter than taproot addresses. Those, actually, I shouldn't say are perfectly fine, because there's another potential concern is whenever you go to spend them, anything that goes in the mempool will need to reveal its public key in order to be validated and relayed and packaged up into a block by miners and consensus, past consensus, things like that. So yeah, so that's kind of the high level there. One thing I also want to mention about Shor's algorithm is that it's not great right now. In fact, quantum computers aren't really great right now. They're at least commercially available ones are they're kind of at the state of where vacuum tubes and maybe moving into transistor, like the IBM System 360 of the 1950s or 60s, like that era might be the best way to describe where we're at now. And so Shor's algorithm is kind of somewhat limited at the moment, but it's possible that at some point it might not be, because of just the rate at which technology progresses and all the money and time and energy being put into this problem. In particular, there are a number of companies working on this, in addition to IBM. Intel, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Rigetti, IonQ, PsiQuantum, those are all like just pouring billions into this. And also it's worth mentioning that Raytheon and Honeywell have been working on this problem for like probably over 20 years now. So we have no idea what they have, actually, because those aren't necessarily very public about their intentions or their technology. And this is also like a fraction of the companies that are currently working on this technology. This is not all of them. There's some omitted. So that's also a concern because there's lots of companies here on the slide. Now, coming back to Bitcoin, Peter Wille, in year 2019, said that he sufficiently powerful quantum computers and other elliptic curve discrete log problem breaks, he calls them, are hypothetical. And if they do happen, there will likely be a long series of incremental breakthroughs that give us time for more fundamental solutions. And what's interesting is that in the 6 years since this has been posted, there have been and will continue to be a long series of incremental breakthroughs. And eventually we're going to need to establish fundamental solutions in response to these incremental breakthroughs. Some of these include the Microsoft Majorana 1 announcement. Many physicists are, I will say, are skeptical of what they've produced. In particular, I think Sabine Hassenfelder has published some very skeptical and pieces about it, and maybe rightly so. That said, I also am skeptical that Satya Nadella, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think he would lie to his investors or his shareholders, So I would imagine that he has like some fiduciary responsibility not to lie about all the bullish stuff he said about the development. And so maybe somewhere the truth lies somewhere in the middle, as it usually does. But we'll see about that one. Also, Google Willow. Back in December, Google announced a development where they were able to use AI to sort of implement really compact quantum error correction codes, and like to the point where like they only needed a 49, like a 7x7 grid of physical qubits to approximate one logical qubit. And a logical qubit being one that is error corrected and noise isolated. One of the interesting things about the Majorana 1 announcement was that Majorana, or what they call topological qubits, are sort of isolated from noise and pretty much entirely. And so, so long as they're cooled to the correct temperature. It's also worth noting that people have thought about sort of a timeline of quantum emergency. Right now, hopefully, we're in the middle of preparation and design and implementation. That's kind of where we're at. There's also been a proposal that I'll go into in a second. We're working on getting consensus for that proposal. That takes time and energy and work. And in some ways, this talk is a bit of that work. So. And hopefully there will be plenty of time between the first two steps. After once those are done and we have an activation client and we've activated it, that there will be a migration of coins in some way. That hopefully we have plenty of time for. So that might be one reason why to sort of, I hate to use the word rush. I don't want to like rush this. We want a very good, reliable, comprehensive solution. But there is a sense of urgency, and the sooner the better, because there will be time needed to update all the nodes and applications and wallets and things like that. There's also commercial, there's a CNSA 2.0 timeline. So the government is very concerned about this thing. It's very interesting how concerned they are, because you just have to wonder, like, why are they so concerned? And maybe there's, I don't know, it's really hard to say, but it seems like they were concerned about this before we even had good solutions for these things in terms of post-quantum cryptography. But regardless, they have timelines that go out to 2030, 2033. In particular, they hope to sunset entirely RSA and elliptic curve cryptography by the year 2035. As for Bitcoin, what is like one thing you might be thinking is like, how severe is this concern? We estimate about 4 million coins are vulnerable. Somewhere between 4 to 6 million coins are vulnerable at present on chain against what are called long exposure attacks. And whereas like a short exposure attack, on the other hand, would be just a transaction that's been signed and submitted to the mempool without having been mined yet. And the reason there's a distinction is because the kind of quantum computer that's required to sort of recover the key behind a transaction that's in the mempool within a timely manner is a very much more powerful quantum computer than one that could just take as much time as it needed to look at coins on chain. The one thing I'd like to stress is just that this is not something we can fix overnight. It will take a lot of time. It'll take a lot of, it's a kind of an immense coordination problem. And, you know, in some ways, like, hopefully we're very early to this problem, and we're going to have plenty of time to implement satisfactory solutions and answer everybody's questions and implement nodes and wallets and layers, especially fixes to layers, because a lot of them use Taproot. Anybody using Taproot should be very concerned about this issue. So what do we do? Because I don't want to like just scare you guys and like leave you, you know. First of all, let's just give you an idea of how big elliptic curve cryptography signatures and public keys are. They're not big, as you can see, 33 bytes, 70 bytes, 32 bytes, 64 bytes. Post-quantum cryptography, on the other hand, it's more like hundreds or thousands of bytes. In particular, in BIP360, which implements what's called pay-to-quantum resistant hash, it specifies 3 NIST approved algorithms. One we originally came up with, it was called ski sign. We had it also in the spec. Later, we came to find that ski sign took 15,000 times longer to verify than elliptic curve cryptography. And so these other ones, not nearly as bad, but they're still quite large and expensive. So I was really curious about, like, not just curious, but also like one of the big problems we have is sort of like, how do we have a sort of ergonomic and comprehensive solution for implementing these algorithms, the specific ones that are specified in the BIP. And so I made a library called libbitcoin PQC. You can find it on GitHub /cryptoquick/libbitcoin PQC. And it implements FNDSA, also known as Falcon, MLDSA, also known as crystals of lithium, and SLHDSA, also known as Sphinx. And to give you a better idea of the performance comparison between these, there's like some factors there that you can kind of get a sense for. I'd like to publish these slides, so maybe go on X and maybe Nostr. I'll also, side note, I'm not a big fan of Nostr just because every profile is a public key. That said, it's very cool, and I do have an account. I'm just expecting that one day I might not be able to trust it. And so this is a slight comparison. There's also, this is just like an overview of some BIPs, pay-to-quantum resistant hash. I'm going to talk about Hourglass in a second. And then we'd also need qubit activation, maybe some for Q derivation. PSPTs is a very complex and difficult endeavor. Hourglass in particular I want to discuss because it's essentially a consensus level change that I want to introduce to Bitcoin as a potential solution for the problem of there being 34,000 pay-to-public key coins out there that contain about like 1.6 or 1.8 million Bitcoin. And these are largely considered either lost coins or Satoshi's coins. And what I would want to do is I wouldn't want to disable all of the P2PK coins. That would be like essentially burning them, which has been proposed. Not a lot of people like that. It's sort of like taking everything over 21 million and being like, oh, actually, no, it's actually everything over 21 million minus some subset of coins, which is just not as, doesn't sound as good. And instead, let's just, first of all, disable making new ones, because that's bad. And then make it so that people can only, like, anybody who has the key, let's just say that, for one of these coins, they can only include one P2PK input per block. And so instead of having 34,000 transactions hit Bitcoin within a span of a few hours, we get to spread that across 8 months at a minimum. And it cannot be more than one block. We can't just be like, oh, let's solve this problem for like one a day, and then we can solve it for 80 years. Unfortunately, that messes with the mining incentives. But I've discussed this at length with a few miners, and I think that this proposal is incentive compatible with miners. And I'd be very interested in hearing everyone's thoughts on this potential solution to the problem. Also, at Surmount Systems, we worked on something called Satoshi Shield. We're looking essentially at how many Bitcoin are there out there that are in P2PK keys, and also how many UTXOs are out there that have P2Public key commitments. And this graph is unfortunately not complete. I'm still working on building a better indexer for this, but that's about as far as I've gotten so far. And once it's done, then hopefully there will be a website people can go to just kind of monitor, how many of these coins are out there, so that once they're moved, this graph goes lower, and you kind of get a sense for, oh no, is this actually happening? So of course, like, we have to, in order for this to work out, we need to convince certain stakeholders, individual node runners, economic node runners. Exchanges in particular have cold wallets that are reused addresses. Many of the top addresses are reused in terms of like their address balances. Also, enthusiasts, investors, influencers. We have to like convince a meaningful, in fact, more than meaningful, like a vast majority of these people that this is a worthwhile thing for them to do. And I think, generally speaking, it is maybe I'm biased, but I just think that, even if there's a 1 in 1,000, like a 0.1% chance that quantum computers can't come to break Bitcoin in our lifetimes, I think it's such a serious problem that we should do our best to try to solve it as soon as we can in a way that balances all the considerations and that everybody's happy. And this is an optional, non-coercive sort of approach that's hopefully less controversial and more approachable and practical. So yeah, that's all I have. Please check out surmount.systems and also follow Surmount Systems on X. And that's my nonprofit. And also, Isabel, you want me to say something? Oh, yes, of course, BIP360.org. Please check out the BIP. Thank you.
Hey, FYI, I think you can find that chart that you want on txstats.com. It has the pay to pub key chart. So there's like 1.72 million Bitcoin across 45.8 thousand UTXOs. Right?
45.8 thousand. Wow. So that's basically a year's worth of UTXOs then. Yeah, good point. Thank you. I've seen that side. I just, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so question though, I guess the first issue that comes to mind with the sort of hourglass gating of spinning stuff is, sure, I guess you can gate it by UTXO, but not by value, right? Have you looked at the value distribution across the UTXOs?
Correct. Well, the average value of these outputs is about 50 Bitcoin because that was the first block reward.
Yeah. So I don't know, as far as you're aware, you haven't seen too much else consolidation. I think the guy whose hard drive is in a landfill, for example, I think that he consolidated about 8,000 coins into one UTXO. So there's probably a few of those.
Okay, good to know. Thank you, James.
What kind of number of logical qubits is it for speeding up the hashing, and that's like a quadratic scaling instead of like an exponential speed up for
correct
doing Grovers?
Yeah, for Grovers, yeah.
And then I guess another question too is how many like qubits, once we break or use Shores to break ECC, how far does that get to between the short term and like just breaking it? Is that like a couple orders of magnitude?
So the gap between Shores and Grovers, I'm not quite sure I can answer, but what I can say about Shores in particular is that I think it takes about 2,000 or so at a very minimum logical qubits to run Shores over ECC. And so 2,000, 3,000, that's going to be a number we're going to want to watch. Also, for like physical qubits, uncorrected qubits, we might be more like 100,000. And so those are both like kind of numbers to keep an eye out for in the news, I guess, see how close we're getting to.
I actually just want to add to that. So Juan Maldacena, the guy who did the ADS CFT paper, he actually wrote a paper on this, and he showed that it's about 7,000 logical qubits to simulate a black hole, and that's about the same for actually breaking RSA. So it's like, if you want to, I forget the name of the paper, but it's super interesting. And it was interesting that he wrote that paper because he really knows about all the mathematical details of those types of models. So that's not my question though. Yeah, it's interesting that it doesn't seem like there's a lot of concern from Bitcoin core devs. Like for instance, Taproot was introduced, like they knew that quantum computers in theory could be coming, and they seem to be like pushing a lot of people into Taproot for privacy reasons. How do you deal with the fact that it seems like no one really seems to be taking the problem seriously?
Well, one way to deal with that is just to come to places like this and try to explain the problem and advocate for it. And another way is also just to build the solution and put it out there for people to evaluate upon its merit. And hopefully, it is the right thing. Also, one thing I forgot to mention is, and this is a little bit alpha for this conference, is that I have been joined by a co-author, Ethan Heilman. So he will be helping me co-author this paper, this BIP 360. Yes. So thank you.
I just want to add one more, which is, it seems like, again, because of no one's taking it as seriously, Taproot, one of the big benefits of Taproot was they're trying to get more and more people to use it for the privacy enhancement, because like it kind of, all of the, it just becomes a single pub key. You can't really tell the difference between a script spend and a regular key spend. So do you see the community, like, should we still be pushing it for the privacy reasons, or should we be more cautious? Like, it seems like you don't get as many of the privacy benefits if we're not really pushing Taproot, right?
Well, yeah, what's interesting about Taproot in particular is like, it is so good. Like, we have Schnorr signatures, and those are so good. Like, we don't know how good we have it when we compare it to, the current state of post-quantum cryptography. Signature aggregation, key aggregation, things like Frost multisigs, MUSIC2, lightning channels that are indistinguishable from ordinary Taproot spends. That's just so cool. Yeah, it's just kind of depressing because, man, they are so vulnerable. Anyway, anybody who's really into Taproot should be definitely taking it I'll look at this BIP. I want to maintain Taproot compatibility, just add on post-quantum cryptography as kind of like additional locks for those transactions that you can commit to in an address. And so in BIP 360, we basically allow you to generate multiple public keys and multiple against these multiple signature algorithms and combine them and use them to secure your coins in a way that's hopefully somewhat compact and efficient.
Awesome. That's all the time we have for Hunter. So thank you.